Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's Stephanie, and today I'm going to give you a little news. Last night I talked about it a little bit on the video I deleted, which was about several things. Claudia Gray, her new book coming out about Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and James Gunn, Ryan Johnson being on a list. Just kind of, I'll explain why I deleted it first. The reason why is because the person on 4chan who does Hollywood Pedo Hunt had to put a racial epithet in the post. We don't do racism here. Not at all. Okay? We don't do the soft racism that the left does either. Everyone's treated the same. All right? And that really bothered me. A friend called it out, called to my attention. Literally, at the same time I was rereading the thing, going, "Ew, we can't be talking about this." So I took it off. Now I just discovered that yes, there was an investigation into James Gunn, federal investigation about child porn. That was discontinued a few months back. The feds decided not to press charges, so he actually was under investigation. So none of this extra stuff should be surprising to anybody. Okay, so let's go into the next thing. I was talking to my contact in the film industry, and he basically said the Claudia Gray book had probably been in works for over a year, a long time. I mean, the books take a long time to produce, so they had no choice probably but to release it. Now, I know a lot of people are upset. I'm horrified. We're probably going to get Spartan love from it. But, right now, about the only thing we can do is not buy the book and make it a complete and utter failure. Show Disney again that they shouldn't be hiring people like that to be doing Star Wars. She's not a Star Wars fan. She's a misandrist, LGBT, XYZ, whatever, activist. She's a bigot. She doesn't need to be doing Star Wars. So what he also told me is that if they start doing new EU books, or animating them or whatever, the EU start bringing more stuff out from that, new novels, maybe the continuing story about Jana and Jason Solo, or whatever. That's where we can see that this new canon of Disney's is probably going to be gone or retconned to the point where it's palpable for all of us. Interesting that Star Wars was not represented at San Diego Comic-Con at all. All right, that tells me something. That tells me that they were worried about how the fans would react. They were worried about how they'd be treated, and they're trying to figure out what they're doing wrong. And we're here to tell them, aren't we? So my main thing today, let's talk about heroism. John Wayne said that being brave was being scared, afraid, but saddling up and riding anyway. All right. Adolf Galland, the German World War II general who was also a fighter pilot, said, in order to be brave, one must also be afraid. How does that tie into Star Wars? Well, here's the deal. Jedis cannot give in to their fear. That is where bravery comes from, is it not? Right? This is where the hero rises. They're not any different than you and me. They're the ones that are afraid and still go in anyway. They're the ones that stand in the breach the longest. Okay, give you an example. Rick Rescorla. If you ever seen the movie We Were Soldiers, or read the novel, he wasn't really big in the movie, but in the novel, or the book, not the novel, it wasn't a novel. We Were Soldiers Once and Young. General Hal Moore, who was played by Mel Gibson, said of Rick Rescorla he was the bravest man he'd ever met. He could be heard singing during the middle of the Battle of the Idrang Valley. He was there singing. And what's really kind of tragic about Rick Rescorla is that he was the chief of security for one of the big trading houses at the World Trade Center on 9/11. And when the first plane hit, he was singing the same song he sang at Idrang as he's helping people get out. He went back in for more and was killed when the building collapsed. Okay, which is very tragic. I mean, the man was a great, brave, heroic figure. Was he afraid? Oh yeah. I mean, you'll never. I mean, you'll never find a true hero and have them tell you, yeah, they weren't afraid, because that would mean they were crazy. So let's figure this out. How does it connect to Star Wars? If you honestly think that Luke taking his first steps to being a Jedi was, oh, I'm going to be a Jedi. No, he was afraid. If you honestly think that Han turning the Falcon around and streaking back to rescue Luke before Vader got him in A New Hope wasn't afraid, think again. They stand in the breach the longest and they do the right thing. Again, heroes stand in the breach the longest and they do the right thing. Audie Murphy, Mark Murphy, Navy SEAL who was killed in Afghanistan during Operation Red Wings. You can name dozens and dozens of men in the past who have mastered their fear to help their fellow soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, to stand in the breach to help them get away, to do the brave thing. And sometimes the brave thing isn't necessarily being physically brave. Sometimes it's being morally brave. Oskar Schindler, very indecent man. He saved, 1,600 Jews from being killed by the Nazis during World War II. He basically hid them in plain sight, making them essential to the war effort. And what's interesting is that nothing they ever made could ever be used by the German government, because it was all crap, intentionally crap, under Schindler's orders. Okay, that's being brave. John Paul II, saying Midnight Mass in Poland and Krakow during basically the communist occupation of Poland, and saying and standing there facing down the communists and the Russians. That's being brave. You don't necessarily have to grab a gun and jump into the fray to save people, to do the right thing, to even save innocent life if you really think about it. So how does this connect with Star Wars? It connects in a way because Star Wars is the story of humanity in a nutshell. Okay, it is the hero's journey. It is the journey into adulthood for men and women. Luke, Han, Leia. It is the culmination of every myth, every legend that our cultures, combined cultures, have been raised on, that have been the tapestry of these cultures for millennia. Okay, this is how real courage and reality and Star Wars meets. Now, what is the problem right now with Disney Star Wars? First, it denies a character arc for Han, Leia, and Luke that was there, that George Lucas made sure was there in the OT. It turns them into people they weren't. Okay. It defies human logic. Now, we're talking about fantasy. However, you cannot get people to rationally believe that someone would go from one thing to another and then regress back to the first thing they were. It kind of makes me wonder who the people are that are writing these things. Basically, very, what's the word I'm thinking about? Latent adolescence, emotionally stunted people behind all of these terrible stories. I mean, this is ridiculous. In the EU, Han, Leia, and Luke basically kind of come together to figure out how to deal with Leia's real parentage and Luke's, and they come up, and it works. I mean, what they did was work. It was a grown-up adult thing to do. This is emasculating, fearful, non-adult crap written by a woman. No picture of her, apparently. Written by a woman who probably can't deal with her own self. All right. Again, what have I said about art? It reflects the artist. So, Claudia Gray is a very sad person. Okay. So, we're talking about character arc. Luke just walking away is from, in the way that Rian Johnson wrote it and was allowed to perpetuate this garbage, is not Luke Skywalker. I don't know who he is, but it's not Luke. Han, going back to the only thing he was ever good at, with no explanation, really. I mean, even this piece of shit, that's no explanation. That's a big fuck you to the OT, George Lucas, and men and women everywhere. It doesn't make any sense. He basically, Han Solo basically does a 180 character regression. Okay? It makes no sense at all. I mean, it's like, didn't he go through a lot of physical and mental trauma in The Empire Strikes Back, and didn't he kind of commit completely to the rebellion after he was rescued? And had he been committed kind of to the rebellion before that because Leia? Would he just walk away from the person who saved him? I mean, think about it this way. One of my viewers, I can't remember who it was, said it's really interesting that the last person's voice he hears before he gets thrown into carbonite is Leia. And the first person's voice he hears when he's freed from it is Leia. Think about that. But hey, you know, we have to make it woke. Well, fuck that shit. How's that? That doesn't make any sense. That's not grown up. That is not becoming an adult. That is not accepting the things that have happened to you and walking and living as a grown-up human being. Now, in the EU, that's exactly what he did. In fact, in the Thrawn trilogy, they've been married. Leia's pregnant with the twins. And Han basically, at a meeting, basically looks at Mon Mothma and says, when is she going to have time to, do her Jedi studies? He supports her. The Han Solo in this? Not so much. Who's more realistic? The EU Han Solo. That's who. Okay? So Luke wanders away, makes a big mistake, attacks his nephew, if he is his nephew, and runs away and hides and wants to die. Is that Luke Skywalker? No, it's not. No, it's not. It's basically, when I look at the way Rian Johnson wrote that, it's basically him yelling and screaming at his own father. Because he basically admitted he had daddy issues. And what I love about him, and JJ too, and I'm one of these people that kind of gives JJ Abrams a break, but what I love about Rian Johnson is that he's a Luke Skywalker fan. If you are a Luke Skywalker fan, this film does not exist. Just a second. Alright, I'm going to take you over here. Alright. If you're a Han Solo fan, this does not exist. If you're a Leia fan, neither exist. Okay? So, because they don't make any sense. I'll show you. Let's see, Heir to the Empire. This is the book where Han confronts Mon Mothma, basically saying, when is Leia going to do her Jedi stuff? The Han Solo in The Force Awakens would never have cared to do that. The Han Solo and this piece of garbage would never have done that. Who's the real Han Solo? The Han Solo in the Thrawn trilogy. The Han Solo in the EU. The grown-up. Alright. Not the stunted adolescent. That the writers are the unhappy, insecure babies that wrote this garbage dump. Okay, so heroism. What makes Luke Skywalker a hero? Despite being afraid, he masters his fear and becomes a Jedi and saves his father and helps save the galaxy. Basically, it's his father who turned back to the light by Luke, who actually does save the galaxy because he kills the Emperor, right? Sacrifices himself but kills the Emperor. What makes a hero? Han physically getting through all the bad stuff that happened to him in The Empire Strikes Back. And committing himself to the rebellion to help Leia, to do the right thing. Now, later in the EU, he gets upset and quits, but he doesn't quit on Leia. Wherever she goes, he was going to. Okay, Leia, what makes her a hero? She was a hero when we first met her in the OT and in A New Hope. Her journey is personal. Her journey is discovering, is mastering her fear of falling in love, of becoming a woman, of becoming an adult woman, of all of the things that make a woman a whole person. Okay, that's her hero's journey. And because everything else, her leadership, her courage, her physical courage, is never questioned no matter what throughout the whole entire OT. Okay. So in this, it makes her look like an idiot. It makes her look like she doesn't know what she's doing. But of course, Rian Johnson knows shit about A, military leadership, B, leadership in general, and C, women. All right. This thing is really truly horrifying to me, as far as Leia is concerned, and horrifying about Luke. And this creature right there, just shitty. The new characters are all shitty. They're just crappy, but that's another video. So anyway, heroism. These three characters are the ones that stood in the breach, mastering their fear, acknowledging it, and stood in the breach the longest. Okay, no matter what was going on, they did what they had to do. Did they not? Okay, so and of course we gotta talk about I forgot about this, Han and Leia's romance. That is probably the most epic romance of the last 50 years. Of course, we get stunted adolescents on both sides. Yes, because no one changes ever. I can't even describe how disgusted I am that that Disney could not at least leave some semblance of those two characters alone. All they are, it's in the same name and that's it. That's it. There's absolutely nothing to do with the EU as far as that relationship is concerned. No acknowledgement of anything that happened to Han. No acknowledgement of anything that happened to Leia. No acknowledgement of the sacrifices they made to be together. Because, I don't know, is Claudia Gray's parents selfish? Did Daddy not pay enough attention to her? Did he run off? Because she's not writing about Han and Leia, she's writing about her parents. Thank you. I really wanted to know about your parents. Did anybody else want to know about her parents? I could give a shit about her parents. Okay? So, yeah, that, when you're writing a tale like Star Wars, and you're writing something like that, and you have a romance, you cannot go back on it. You cannot disassemble it. You can't deconstruct it like this piece of shit did. All right? You have to move it forward. Relationships move forward. People don't go back to who they were. I am not the same person I was 10 years ago. None of you are. None of you are. And the idea that emotionally these two could not, didn't change. And I'm not saying towards each other, but I'm saying mature, grow up, is insane. And it says a lot about Gray. It says a lot about the people behind this shit. That, that they don't think people change. They can't accept adulthood. They can't accept that there are things, you know what I'm saying? They can't accept that people can be committed to each other. Well, it's Hollywood, so why would they? They can't accept that, they can't accept traditional relationships. They don't have traditional, normal relationships. How's that? I mean, a lot of these people, even their normal relationships aren't normal. But, so that's why we got this shit. So, and it's probably one of the most profoundly disturbing things about The Last Jedi, about The Force Awakens, is the lack of thought behind it, the lack of behind the characterization of Han, Leia, and Luke, the lack of respecting those relationships, the lack of understanding that people are adults now and they work through their problems. To me, I could say that it was all hurried and no one really sat down and thought about it. But when you shove an SJW agenda between every goddamn page, what are you gonna do? You can't uphold the spirit of those characters, their character arcs, their relationships, if you're gonna do that, and if you're in a hurry. You have to think through what is happening now. Now, since we're getting rid of the EU, what is happening now? So, all those relationships made them heroic too. I mean, Leia discovering that she wasn't Bail Organa's, that she knew she was adopted, but discovering that she was Darth Vader's daughter. And finally, after reading Shmi's tablet journal that Shmi had wanted to see Anakin get, that's Leia's hero's journey too. She learned to forgive her father. Han's hero's journey is, I want to hear more. He forgave Anakin a long time before Leia did. And it's really interesting to me when you read Tatooine Ghost to see his reaction to everything that's going on as far as Leia's relationship with her father, her real father. It's very interesting. Han is truly a grown-up man in this situation. And again, Claudia Gray can't do it. She just can't. She just freaking can't do it. And that's heroic on his part. That's heroic on Leia's part to be able to forgive Anakin. It's heroic on Luke's part to be the one to carry that message to her that he was our father, he did change, he's been forgiven. And I was there to see it. And and to accept it. I mean, oh, guess what? Adolf Hitler's my dad. That'd be really hard. I mean, it's kind of, the analogy is kind of the same in some ways. Okay? And that's what heroism is about, is accepting what's there, and if it's bad, mastering your fear of it and trying to change it, and never giving in to your fear. Because remember, fear leads to hate, hate leads to anger, anger leads to the dark side. Or fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to the dark side. Remember that. And it's not only physically staying in the breach the longest, it's also accepting things about yourself and about people that you don't, that you otherwise would not have. All right, Vader being Leia and Luke's father. Han accepts it. Leia then accepts it. Okay, after she gets to know her grandmother through that journal, and it's a big deal. That's what being brave is. That's what being an adult is. Apparently, that was lost on Ryan Johnson in the Star Wars story group. Okay, there's nothing heroic at all in this piece of shit. Nothing. So anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I'm not rambling. I was trying to keep my thoughts cogent and together. So this is Steph, signing out. See you around the galaxy.